Mikey Burrows. Alongside me, as ever, is Chris Iwelumo. And this episode, we're joined by a man who made 254 appearances across two spells from 2008 to 2017. 2 promotions, 2 relegations. The man who silenced Anfield. Welcome to the Old Gold Club, Richard James Michael Stearman.
Oh, full government name.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's because I've only just found out that's your full name.
Thank you. Both my granddads, James and Michael.
I love that. Michael's a great name. We're going to talk about Anfield because it's a big part of the story, but we kind of have to go back to the very beginning. We've been talking a little bit on our extended podcast, which is available to download in all the usual places, about your kind of origins, the fact that your dad worked at Banks's, you were born here in Wolverhampton and ended up coming back. And 2008, suddenly Leicester have gone down and Mick McCarthy says, come here. Never any doubt?
No, not really. Like we said earlier, Leicester, I got picked up when I was 10, played first team football from quite a young age, 17, managed to rack up 150 odd appearances, unfortunately went down to League One. They needed the money. I wanted to progress my career, so a few teams said they were interested, Wolves being one of them, and yeah, jumped at the opportunity to join a massive club.
At the same time as him?
Yeah, well, obviously before we were talking about, you spoke a couple of times to Mick before you actually joined. What was your impression of Mick McCarthy? Because in the exact same summer, I had many conversations with him. So what impression did he put on you?
It's funny actually. The first time he rang me, I was away on a lad's holiday. I was in Iron Appa with the rest of my youth team. My agent pre-warned me. Listen, like this has gone quite far down the line now, so it looks like I was going to sign for Wolves. So he was just like, listen,
answer your phone.
Go, make sure you're sober. Go back to your hotel room. Get in a quiet room, and Mick McCarthy's going to ring you. Just be yourself. Tell him about yourself and what you want to achieve. Blah blah blah. So I get the phone call. Mick rings. I'm a bit nervous. He's obviously a top manager.
Steers.
Like, you know how he is. And yeah, he
didn't know there was an impression.
It's not bad, is it?
So he didn't really need to sell it to me, of course. Wolves is such a massive club. Obviously, my family, we spoke a bit before, I've got a little bit of history with the city. And yeah, it's just something that I really wanted to be a part of. And like I say, he didn't have to sell the club to me or anything along those lines. It was sort of, when I'm back off holiday, I'm signing, and that was it. And the rest is history.
Right, I'll ask you something then. Right, so centre back or full back, you, good footballer, can play anywhere. You could probably play midfield, probably have done. Would you say that's a negative as a footballer? Because you found it hard to kind of break in earlier on because you could just go and utility, you can play here, there and everywhere. What would you say now? Would you say that if you had the opportunity to do that again, you would nail down and say, look, I'm not playing full back, I'm a centre back? Or
initially, no, I thought it helped me. Growing up through youth team, I was always centre half. Obviously, playing against lads sort of my age and a few years older, like I could hold my own. But coming into a man's world at 17, playing against someone like yourself, you'd end up bullying me. So I got pushed out to right back on becoming a first team player, which was a bit difficult because I'd never really played there. I wasn't trained or educated as a fullback. I was a centre half. I played England youth team as a centre half. That was my position. But I understood that in order to survive or play, I had to evolve a little bit and be a right back. And playing for Leicester, I did play a lot at fullback. Although when I joined up with the national team, I was back to centre half, or if I played in the reserves, I was centre half. And Mick, that was one of the things Mick spoke to me about. He was like, listen, I've seen you play a lot in the reserves and at fullback, but I want you to be a centre half. You're coming here as a centre half. So I was like, perfect, that's music to my ears. I wanted to be a centre half. And but as it transpired at Wolves, I sort of played quite a little bit at fullback, whether that be on the right. I played 5 or 10 games at left back. Yeah. And it was, you know yourself, you'd do anything for Mick. He was like, listen, I need you to play fullback. I was like, not a problem, Gaffer. I'll play there for you. But eventually, I wanted to transition into centre half, and I think as my time at Wolves sort of evolved, I moved away a little bit. Certainly after the Premier League season or the last Premier League season, I sort of established myself at centre half, I thought, and I think I've rarely played right back since then.
That's the thing, that by the time you nailed down being a centre half, things had started to go badly for the team.
Yeah, and unfortunately for myself, it just kind of happened that way. That Mick liked a centre half out there, didn't he? He liked to be quite defensive minded, as it were, and we did have some great fullbacks, better fullbacks than me. But yeah, I found myself out there quite a little bit, which wasn't a problem for me initially. Like as long as if I'm out there, like I'm not bothered, and I'll do a job for Mick, whatever he needs from me. I'll play wherever he wants, and but I did see myself as a centre half, and that's where I wanted to play. I felt that was my best position, and yeah, I think in that final sort of season in the Premier League, I think it's the most I've played in the Premier League appearance wise that season, and they were all generally at centre half.
Because you look at your appearance numbers, I mean, you made 40 appearances in that first season of the promotion, and then 18 in the first year in the Premier League. And then after that, it's actually, in the high 30s, you were kind of that regular from it. I guess, is there sometimes a feeling that because you were a youngster when you joined, and because you've been a bit of a utility man and able to play in other positions, that you kind of get overlooked a bit and people take you for granted a bit?
Yeah, I mean, you can do, maybe from perspective of starting games. If you're nailed on one position, you're either in or you're out, aren't you? You either start or you don't. Whereas a utility man, you're always involved. So I want to be involved all the time. So whether that's if I'm starting or I'm on the bench, as long as if I'm in and around it, because of my utility, maybe that's why I've racked up so many appearances, because I can come on in several different positions. But yes, I mean, like I've said many times, I wanted to be a centre half, and that's where I've sort of found myself the last decade or just under of my career.
You said there about you would do anything for Mick, and it's something that's probably been echoed by every player that's played under him. Why? What effect did he have on you then? So why? Because I'd say the exact same. But for you personally, why would you do that for him as a manager? I
think because of the respect that he had of not just me, but I think 99% of the players that have played under Mick, that he sort of had. I mean, he is that father figure. He is dad to a lot of us. I mean, how many managers will you see now and still call Gaffer?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Mick.
Yeah.
And that's probably it for me, bar maybe one or two. And I think, yeah, just that general respect he had. I think it's strange, even for players that weren't in the team, they still liked or respected Mick, which is rare for players. If a manager's not playing you do not like that manager. But with Mick, it was different. We all had a common goal. We all were pushing together, and yeah, he was that father figure. I think not just for me, but for most of the players he brought in.
Because can we talk about that first season? Because it's interesting, when Carl Henry was in, what I'm going to say, he always says that team doesn't get the credit it deserves because of what happened in the following years, compared to the 2003 team, probably compared to the 2018 team that did it in their own way as well. What do you think of that?
I agree with Carl. I'm afraid I think it's hard for the players in that sort of era to take that. We had done so well, and I think it's hard maybe for the players to say otherwise as well. Sort of, I remember listening to Matt Murray's one, and they had fantastic experiences in their own right, and we should all have probably been celebrated on the same sort of level. Yeah. Maybe that's a bit unfair, but I think the museum thing got to the squad a little bit. I think Carl saying how little coverage that team kind of received. I don't know. It's a difficult one for that team to sort of swallow. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, do you know what? I was having this debate with Michael Kitely the other week, and I was saying, like, the museum thing is a thing where, because it was built around that time, wasn't it? It was like 2010, 11 kind of time when it kind of came through, and you guys were all still playing. So you weren't going to go in the museum when your achievement only happened 2 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Well, still past experience, though, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
but
still
like
an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
but
they're
like,
going to change it now then and put
Well,
the.
Well, why
the
put
team
anything
in?
in at all? Was it not just a poster?
No,
was it
no,
just
no.
a poster that was put into the
well,
the
there
promotion
was
squad?
look, I'm not here to defend the museum. I didn't build the museum, but my view was that, like, I could understand why there wasn't a big deal made of your group at that time. Now there might be an argument to make a bigger deal.
Yeah, maybe because
of
it
that
was so fresh. Maybe the team that came up through the. I mean, the stats don't lie, do they? The team that came up through the playoffs came straight back down. Our team won the league, stayed up. So you would have thought they'd have got a little bit more recognition, but I mean, is that just being a little bit bitter? I don't know.
I think on the date of the museum coming, that was when Wolves were on a decline, wasn't it? So again, it's one of them giving credit to a squad of players, a great squad of players, when things aren't going great, would probably rub a few people in the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that a massive part of it is that because so many of you are still playing, that, you know, you don't go into the museum until your kind of time has passed a little bit, because the museum celebrates the club's past, whereas you were the club's present at that time. And I say that's just my view on it. I understand why some of you feel frustrated by it, and especially because that 08-09 season kind of gets overlooked sometimes in the realms of just how good. I mean, this big guy scoring goals in the early part of it, and the way that campaign evolved coming out of a year beforehand that hadn't been that great, especially like scoring goals, missed out on the playoffs on goal difference, and then the way you boys took to it made such a difference.
Yeah, I think Mick McCarthy, I guess, his experience, again, he knew exactly what the squad needed. You know, I remember we went away to, we played Burton in the pre-season game. Remember Kites, after the match, he called it. He says, we're going up this year. It's just weird when you think, he says, we've got everything, we can bully teams, we can play football. And we did, we just went, we played an expansive game that we knew that we just had goals coming from everywhere, you know, with the quality that we had. You know, we never feared anyone, I don't think, that season. You know, there was some big teams, but we were I think we started well, unbeaten, and we just hit the floor running, really, you know, so it was always going to...
I don't begrudge the playoff team getting the amount of hype they do, or the team currently. They deserve every accolade they get because they're unbelievable. It's just maybe that 08-09 team should get a little bit more to even it out.
Well, as I say, there is always an issue because the 08-09 team, many of them were part of the decline. And the big question that we always ask to any of you guys that come in that were part of it is why? What happened? Why did it drop off in such a way?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, the Premier League's obviously the best league in the world, and it's tough for anyone. And then we lose Mick when we're still doing all right, and it then becomes a tough task for TC and the squad, and we're kind of on a downward slope from there with uphill battle, as it were. After that, it's a hard one, isn't it? We chopped and changed. We brought in Stollard. He tried to play a certain way, brought in players. Then there's still a lot of players there that are from Mick's regime, and TC's still hanging about the club, and does Stoller really want him there? No. So it was kind of it was a weird season. It was tough. I ended up going out on loan in the January, and no, I don't think anyone envisaged that we would go down, but we were certainly going to struggle, I think, and ultimately it ended up we got relegated. You
know, the Mick thing, was that a massive shock to the group of players? Because like you say, they look at him as a father figure, but when he went, and he was probably, rightfully and probably in hindsight, if they kept him in, that was a probably chance. Was it that bad? So if you're saying that, then it was that action of him being let go was probably the right thing then.
Listen, this episode isn't about me and my views. I think that it's interesting that you're not the only player who said that you would have had a better chance if Mick had stayed.
$1,000,000%.
Because from the outside, there will be fans who will say that you weren't winning games at the time.
But when he got the sack, were we 17th maybe?
I think the win at QPR had come, which ended a really barren run. But then obviously the Albion game happened.
Yeah, I mean, when the Albion game happens, we're all thinking, this could go one way here. Mick could be getting the boot, but we didn't want that as a squad. Or 99%, I'm sure there was one or two players that maybe weren't playing that might have. But as a squad, we didn't want that, so we were hoping that he wouldn't go. So I think after we had the meeting, and Mick was like, "Well, that's me, guys. I'm gone," and we're all just sat there in silence and shock, and TC's there, and he's getting emotional, and as soon as the meeting finished with Jez, and it's sort of like, right, lads, let's continue as what you're doing, and we're like, it's a real body blow that Mick's gone. He has built that team. All of us in there were playing for Mick and the club. We were here because of Mick, and like I said, he was that father figure. I think every one of that team straight after that meeting went upstairs to Mick's office, knock on the door, thanks for everything, like, we're gutted for you, we didn't want this to happen. And I've never had that as a player throughout my career where a manager had meant so much to a team. So it was a tough period. And then for Terry, I mean, a great experience for him to become a manager, but it was a tough ask for him to, I remember listening to his podcast, and it was like, if he couldn't do it with Mick, how was he going to do it on his own? So yeah, I mean, it was a tough period, but I would have definitely said that we had a better, and even if we go down, who's better to bring us back up than Mick with that team? No one. It's Mick. So, I mean,
so on to you now. Like, so after relegation in the Championship, new manager comes in. You're not really in favour, but again, the ultimate professional. You just keep chapping at the door, doing what you can in training. How difficult was that? Because obviously you had the opportunity then that you had to go leave a club that you've been at for many years, had great success. So how difficult was that period for you then?
Really tough. I remember Stoller came in, and we were in Ireland. What was the hotel we used to pre-season at? Carton House, was it? In Dublin. So he comes in, has a meeting with everyone. Come in, sit down. So where do you see this season going? Like, where do you want to play? I know you played a lot of centre half and right back, and I said, centre half. I'm a centre half. I've had to play quite a bit of fullback, but I want to play centre half. I'd just seen out a Premier League season at centre half, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, quite a few boys want to play centre half. You're gonna play right back." And straight away I was like, "That's not my. I want to play centre half." And instantly it caused a little bit of friction. I think Zubar had gone in and said he wants to play centre half. We got Raj, we got Berra. I'm thinking to myself, like, I might not really play too much here, and then a few things happened throughout the season. Stoller's chopping between me and Foles. I'm in and out of the team, and certain things happen. I'm a big believer of if a team wins, they probably deserve the chance to play the next week. Something happened. We'd beaten Ipswich maybe away, got a clean sheet. I'd done really well, played fullback. Comes to the next game, names the team. I'm not playing, and that's the only time I've really fallen out with the manager. I went to see him and just, lost my temper a little bit, and I regretted it, and I've never done that again with another manager, and it kind of just tarnished our relationship a little bit, and it was a frustrating period for myself because Wolves was my team, and I wanted to play and I wanted to help, and we'd just been relegated, and then we'd not performing well, and Mick's gone, and I want to be out there. I want to fight for the club. I want to play. I want to win points. I want to get us back up the league, and I wasn't really getting that opportunity. And then Stoller gets the sack.
Yeah.
Dean Saunders comes in, and I think, okay, maybe I could get a little bit of a fresh start, and and the same sort of thing happens again, and I wasn't really involved, and a few things were said to me that didn't quite happen. So I thought, you know, and then Mick rings and says, listen, I need you to come and play for me. So, you know, that transpires into me going to join Ipswich.
You said there that you went in and got angry. Now then, you followed that by saying, I wanted to play, this is the position I wanted to play. You know, how can that meeting go wrong? So you felt yourself that you stepped across the line then, and you said you got angry. But as a manager, if you're not picking a player, you should expect him to be chapping on the door.
Well, I think that comes from how we all experienced Mick, how he was we've all sort of grown up with him and how he acts with his players and his management, and he's by far the best manager I've had at that. So you know yourself, Friday morning comes and TC's the Grim Reaper. He's coming round and he's poking his head round. Oh, have you seen Steers? And I've got my head like this trying to, if he didn't tell me, he can't drop me. Do you know? So Mick was great. Like he'd be like, listen, Steers, I'm going with such. And if it was me at that point, I'm you know, Foles is playing, or Bearer's playing in there today. You know, you've been great. Just keep doing what you're doing. You'll get your chance. Blah blah blah. And then when it goes the complete opposite way, and I think you know, Stoller had his ways, and communication maybe with the players wasn't. He felt that he didn't have to do that, which is fine. Like he's got his principles. So I just, you know, growing up with Mick and being used to Mick and sharing the same sort of principles, it was tough for me then, you know, to take. And you know, I like I said, that's probably one of my biggest regrets, is just that one conversation I've had with a manager, and I've tried to be more professional since that, and just, you know, prove people wrong other than, you know, air my frustration straight off the bat.
Yeah.
In a way, was you being away from the club for that 6 months actually a slight blessing? Because when the second relegation happens and Kenny comes in, an awful lot of your former teammates get swept into the bomb squad that we had Roger Johnson on and talking about it in a previous episode. But you didn't. It was kind of you and Dave Edwards were the two that survived, really.
I wouldn't call it a blessing, because I didn't want to see Wolverhampton relegated.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, I've gone out on loan to play, and to play for a manager I want to play for. You know, obviously that I respect and whatever. Not that I didn't respect Stoddard. I'm just saying I wanted to, you know, if I was going to leave for anyone, it was Mick. And at the time, Ipswich were bottom of the table, and that didn't bother me, because I wanted to just play and I wanted to, you know, be with Mick again and whatever. So on leaving Wolves, that wasn't in my thought plan that, like they're not doing great, they're going to get relegated. I just wanted to go out and play some games. But as it was transpiring, Wolves ended up struggling, and you know, it was frustrating for me, because I wanted to be there and help and play, and not saying that I would have changed anything being back, but I know that, you know, it probably meant a little bit more to me than possibly some of the other players. And yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be out on loan. I wanted to be at Wolves, and like I said, I wanted to be a part of it and help. But
what did Kenny say to you then? So was it made very evident that you were in his plans?
Yeah, definitely. As soon as Kenny came in, I didn't quite know where I was going to stand. The club have gone down, but I've not kind of been a part of that. So am I going to get tainted with the same brush? But Kenny was the opposite, really. Sort of said, listen, like, you've gone out, you've done well on loan, I want you here, I want you to play. Although at the time, it was a little bit up in the air, because because I'd done well at Ipswich, they might have wanted to sign me, or I might have gone elsewhere. But he sort of, you know, said, I would like you to play. I understand there's, you know, other things going on in the background, but if you're here, you will play.
We're going to come back to a lot of that in the League One season on our podcast Extra, which is available to download from all the usual places. Well worth listening to for much more from Richard Stearman. I just very quickly want to get onto this whilst we're on our Facebook and YouTube and social media show. On you then, when you leave, so you've had a couple of years back in under Kenny, and you were Player of the Year, and then suddenly 4 games into the campaign, you're gone. And I remember that day because you were on the front of the programme that's how little the media team knew that you were going to go. You were the main part of the programme that day, but you weren't. I turned up at the ground and it was like, you're not going to believe this, he's not in the team.
Yeah.
What happened?
Where do I start? I mean, I remember at the back end of that season, I was driving to Telford for the player awards night that we do. And on my way, I get a phone call from my agent. And I'm thinking, he's wishing me good luck, because I was nominated for a couple of awards. I've just come off the back of a great season. I'm up for player of the season, both players player. And he said, listen, I've got Fulham being quite persistent with me. I think something might happen here. They might put a bid in. I was like, no, like, shut up. I'm just about to potentially pick up an award here. I've had a great season. I'm like, not interested. I'll give you a call after the awards. And it just kind of didn't really go away. And you know how football works.
Yeah.
Out of the three parties, buying club, selling club, player, 2 out of those 3 have got to be sort of willing to do something, and then sort of persuade the third to jump on board. So this kind of didn't go away all summer. So Fulham are obviously keen. I'm not that keen. So something must be happening in the background. Wolves potentially giving Fulham a green light that, yeah, maybe at the right price Steers would be available. So I come back in from the season and it's still not really gone away. My agent's like, no, they're still kind of on the phone to me. Something's happening in the background. And yeah, started off the season, I was club captain, not club captain, I was standing skipper. Danny was injured at the time. We started well, I'd managed to pick up those awards, and then Kenny pulls me in before that game, pulls me into his office. I was like, oh, here we go, like he's dropping me or something. He says, listen, the board have accepted a bid for you from Fulham. And I was like, well, so I don't want to go. That doesn't interest me. It's like, listen, the board of Jez has been on, the board have been on, they've accepted the bid. And at the time, I was in the last year of my contract, but I had an option year in the club's favour. So Kenny says to me, well, I don't really want you to go either. So I'll give the board a ring now and let them know. And I said, listen, like, just give me my option year. I was getting offered much better money at Fulham and more years. Just give me my option year. I'm happy. I don't want to go. I just want to stay here and play. And he says, right, I'll ring the board. And they came back to me. Listen, they want the money. They want to sell you. You won't get your option year even if you stay. So it's probably in your best interest to go and speak to Fulham. So I was like, wow. I didn't know where to go from that. I rang my missus. She's crying down the phone. We're sort of like, don't really know what to do here. So that's sort of how it transpired. And what I said to you before on air, I think if I was younger and without my wife and children, then, you know, I might have sat tight and, you know, I would have been on a free then anyway. But, you know, you've got to think about other things and family and yeah, like, that's no slight on Fulham, because it's a great club and it's a big club, and I was lucky that they wanted to have me playing for them. It was just at the time, you know, I didn't want to leave Wolves. I was playing some of the best football of my life, and I was, you know, picking up awards, and we were playing quite well. So, you know, that's just the way it goes in football. But you know, it wasn't something I particularly wanted to do at the time. No,
I mean that period, because Sacco had gone that summer and hadn't really been replaced, and then you go, and I don't think Bennett was that happy at the time, and obviously would eventually leave in the January, and it just felt like a team who had been on the verge of the playoffs the season before dissipated, went in an instant.
Yeah, it was a shame. It was a shame how it transpired. I mean, every player has their price, doesn't they? And Fulham hit the price that managed to get me out. That's just the way football is. I mean, did I want to leave? No. You know, if you ask Sacco, he loved Wolverhampton as well. I mean, it was a good team. We were doing well. We'd done well the previous season. And yeah, I mean, it just didn't quite work out that way, did it? And people make decisions, life-changing decisions, and it's just the way football is.
We will talk about the second coming of Richard Stearman on our podcast Extra. We will talk about that goal at Anfield as well. There is lots more to get into. You're at the club for quite a long time. We're going to get through an awful lot more of it. It's all still to come on the Old Gold Club. Thank you for watching.